Good evening and welcome to Literature in 60 Minutes. I am Zandile Pooe and I will be your host over the course of this hour. Today we are talking gender-based violence. This has been a scourge that has really hit our country hard. We've got lots of campaigns going on at the moment and the attention is more on the level at which the abuse is taking place, the frequency as well as at which it's taking place. And tonight I have got a very special guest. Her name is Anita Aronson, and she has a newly published book titled Skins. And it was released this week, so it's very exciting because it's hot off the press and it's ready to hit the shelves. But you get to hear about it and what happens in her life or what has happened in her life, and she will be sharing a little bit about it tonight, and I'm looking forward to chatting with her just after the break. And we'll be also talking about some of her stories and what she's been through, so please stay tuned. We'll be back with Anita just after the break.
You cannot get God's people out of God's hand.
Praising without ceasing, 24/7. Zoe Live Radio, the abundant life experience. Reaching out and touching you with inspirational music where it matters most. Zoe Live Radio.
Welcome to Literature in 60 Minutes. Thank you so much for tuning into our show. Like I said earlier, we are talking to Anita Aronson this evening, and she is the author of the book titled Skins. Welcome, Anita. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I've known you for some years now, and I know your story. But tonight, I think more than ever, I'm so excited, first things first, for you finding the strength to write this book, because I know it's quite a heart-wrenching story. And I just want you to share with our audience, first of all, maybe a little bit about who you are, and then tell us about your book.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you for the opportunity, Sandy. As you know, my name is Anita Aronson. So I've written the book under my name. I haven't used a pseudonym, which, puts me quite out there. And ever since we've announced the launch, I'm still dealing with all of the emotions that go with that. So, that's a conversation for a different day. But who I am is wife to one husband, thank God,
yes,
and mother to two sons. And that's who I am. Author of Skins, Men, Monsters, and the Fight for Dignity and Self-Love.
Ooh. Now that is a powerful subtitle. So tell us, Skins, what brought about, first of all, the title and the story behind it?
How the title came about, it's all about the healing process after living with abuse. And I think that's the main intent of the book, is to bring the message across that we have the ability and the capability within ourselves to heal from living with violence and abuse.
Yes.
My experience is that because of the debilitating circumstances and the way that we are made to feel when we go through that, we have this sense of non-identity. We don't belong. We don't feel good enough. I can just talk from my experience, from how I felt. I felt used. I felt useless. I felt that there was something wrong with me. I felt that perhaps the reason that I had gone through this was something that I had done or something that I had caused.
Sure.
For my life to be going down that pathway. But Skins talks about how we can take the time and look within ourselves and just work through all of those things, all of the hurt and the pain and the misery, and peel off those layers as if you were taking layers off to get to the core of an onion, to discover the core of our own selves and our well-beings and the beautiful and wonderful creatures that we are and that we were created to be. And in that, find our purpose and find our light and continue to let our light shine in this world, because that's what we were created for. We were created fearfully, wonderfully. We are fearfully and wonderfully and beautifully made. And yet, when we go through something like that, it removes that from the beauty of of why we were created and the beauty of the life that we've been given to live. And that's the intention of the book, is to let everyone understand, or anyone that's going through this, have an experience that they too can rise above that and become everything that they were meant to be.
Yes, sure. And now, what phase of your life was the period when the abuse was taking place?
Oh, that started very, very young. I was still a very young girl, and you'll see that that's where the book starts. The book starts right at, for my first experience with it, when I was still a little girl, maybe 5 years old.
Sure.
And that's where it started. And it started, one of the people that I talk about in the story is someone that lived in the same environment as what we lived. And then, of course, a family member and uncle.
Sure.
That's where it starts.
And now, having to relive those memories in writing the book, how did you deal? How did you process that during your writing process?
There were many times during the time of writing the book that I became very emotional, became very hurt, felt the hurt again and the pain again. And I think it's just the way that the body remembers trauma. Trauma creates, for me, my experience is that trauma creates, and pain and hurt creates these ridges in your brain that never go away. And when you remember a specific occasion or a hurtful situation or a traumatic situation, you feel all those emotions again. Yes. So it was a very emotional journey for me. Sleepless nights, cried many tears, and thank God for the support structure that I have. My husband is very supportive, and he was supportive right through this. It took me 5 weeks to write the book.
Wow.
During that time, very, very emotional, very quiet, more withdrawn than anything else, but also, and something else that comes out in the book, I rely a lot on the healing that I get from being in nature and from hiking. Hiking is one of the things that I do. It started with running, and these days I can't get to run that much anymore. But hiking definitely does it for me, just to be out in nature and be able to clear my head and be able to listen to the messages that come from being in nature and draw strength just from being there and from the stillness and from the peace and the quiet. And I guess that's what's got me through the process, I would say my husband, my sons, and hiking. That's what got me through the emotions and living through that experience again while writing the book.
But what brought about your need to write this book? Because a lot of us have very painful experiences that we can relive often, maybe if we are triggered, our memory is triggered by something. But it's not often that you want to publicly disclose, especially something as painful as abuse of any kind. What led you to feel the need to tell your story?
You're very right in saying that, Sandy. Nobody wants to be out there with that, and I think that has been my experience so far with marketing the book, etc. Is that feeling of being out there and being vulnerable. But if we want to be used as vessels and as agents of change, it goes with that vulnerability. It goes with putting ourselves second or putting ourselves behind the actual cause. So if I can say, for me, this was a calling. So you would know from the conversations we've had, oftentimes when we'd get into conversations of this nature, and because I'd be so open and so vulnerable about it, people would often say, you need to write a book. But that's not where it came from. I believe that there was an actual calling. And so I deliberated over it for quite a number of months. I needed to understand whether it was just me finally wanting to do this, because so many people had said, you need to write a book, people need to hear about this, and people need to hear your story and also be healed by it. And I needed to understand that it was not just me. And so I went on a pilgrimage where I walked through the Karoo for 10 days. We walked from Calvinia to Ceres.
Okay.
And at the end of that journey, I put my hand up and said, I'm ready. And then I had to go through a whole new journey and a whole new experience of understanding that it wasn't a readiness that was required, but it was more a willingness. And so you'll find that I say, even on social media, I say, I was never ready, but I am willing. And that still applies today, especially when I'm talking to you now and I'm feeling emotional about it. When I deal with the emotions associated with being, with all the attention that has already come from the book. I need to remember and I remind myself that I was never ready and I'm never going to be ready, but that I am willing.
Well, thank you for honoring, the calling and responding to it in a positive way to say that, you know what, I'm going to set even my own emotions and my own vulnerability and put myself out there irrespective of how I feel, because this is an important enough story to tell for the next person and not necessarily yourself. But now, what I also want to talk about, without getting too much into the details, is that in hindsight, I'm sure someone out there is listening and they might be going through the abuse experience in some form. So, in hindsight, what would you have done different?
Bold enough to tell people more about it, because strangely enough, when you say to people, I'm being abused, and especially if people know the abuser, it's not easy for people to believe what you tell them you're going through with the person that they think they know.
That's true.
They say to know someone, you have to live with them. And I believe that. And I've read so many stories. There's an account I follow on Instagram called Keep the Energy, where they expose stories of women that have been killed mostly in gender-based violence instances.
Wow.
And there as well, you read stories of how just last week I read a story of a young girl that was killed by her boyfriend, leaving young kids behind, where she perpetually said to her parents, I'm afraid of him. I'm afraid he's going to kill me. He's threatened to kill me. And he killed her in front of people in Limpopo. And now the feeling of remorse from the family is, I wish we'd listened. And I think that's the biggest thing, just in my experience. I think that's the biggest thing for with people living with abuse, is that first of all, you feel people won't believe you. That's what I found. I went through that where I thought people won't believe me. And then even when they do believe you, it's so what do they do, or how do they help you? And that's what I would do differently. I would use my voice a bit more profoundly, and I'd speak more loudly about it. And I'd make sure that I can't be confrontational about it and say to people, this is what is happening to me. I do need help. And you're reading the story of the book. There were many times when I went for help and never got the help until I eventually bought a gun and wanted to kill someone. We shouldn't have to go to that extent. Help should be readily there and readily available for us. And what happens is, as people that live with abuse, we tend to want to withdraw from society and withdraw from our families and just withdraw and hide away because we're so ashamed of what we're going through and what we're feeling and how we feel about ourselves more than anything else. And from my experience, that doesn't help us. That doesn't help anyone. The more we're vocal about our story and the more that we make people understand what it is we're actually going through, then action can be taken and we can get somewhere and perhaps bring the accuser to the fore and make the accuser pay for what they're doing instead of you as the person that is being abused being made to pay for it, so to speak.
And now, with that comes obviously the battle for reconciliation, not necessarily with the abuser, but within yourself, like forgiving yourself for having endured, through the abuse for however many years. Because sometimes, like you said, yours started at a very fragile age where you had no means of defense. And now, later on in your life, you somewhat then feel that you're not getting the help that you need from the sources from which you expected. So how did you navigate your inner reconciliation of saying, okay, this has happened to me, but now I'm going to move on with my life, and I'm going to still be a better person despite what has happened to me.
I think I can say there again, Sandy, that one needs support for that. It's not, I cannot say that it's something I overcame on my own. I'm very grateful for the support that I did get. Talking certainly helps. Talking is an avenue to getting to that point where you perhaps build the strength that you need in order to say that I'm going to live my life and I'm going to move forward. Because when you talk about it, often you find that you're not alone, that there are other people that have been through either similar experiences or something that will perhaps shine a light onto what it is that you need to do in order to move forward. But I reached a point in my life where I decided I was not going to live with it again. But the hatred didn't go away then. That took a number of years of talking, of finding out what are the things that fill my cup. Because when you're empty, where do you draw from, especially if you feel you're not getting the help that you need? So in order to fill my cup, I needed to find the things, and that's what the story talks about. The story talks about the things that I did to fill my cup and to grow me from inside and to make me stronger from inside, and for me to decide that I'm not going to live like that anymore and that I'm actually going to claim back my life. One thing that I never stopped doing, I never stopped using my voice. I could have used it more emphatically and I could have used it more profoundly, I guess, but I never stopped using my voice. And I even used my voice to myself. And that's the wonderful thing about being out in nature and walking on a hiking trail, is that you can talk to yourself out loud, because as you enunciate the words, they develop a meaning, and you plant that seed. And then the more that you do it, and the more that you think that way, and the more that you nurture that type of thinking, the stronger you become and the more you're able to face those things. And the most important thing for me is the narrative that we say to ourselves, the things that we say in our heads to ourselves, and the words that we use when we are talking to ourselves or embracing ourselves. We need to get rid of the wrong narrative. And when I say the wrong narrative, you know what's wrong and what's not good for you.
Yes.
The wrong narratives where we say to ourselves we're not good enough, where I say I'm unclean, where I say I'm never going to be worth anything, where I say who would want to associate with me when they find out what I've been through? Who would have the time of day for me? It's those narratives that we need to change within ourselves. Because when we stop telling ourselves the wrong stories, then we can start to live a better life. So we need to change our own narratives in our heads. We need to rewrite our own stories inside our heads. And we need to start, because the more we do that, the more we change the narrative, and the better words we use, the more we'll change our actions. And as our actions change, so too will our behaviors change. And as our behaviors change, so too then the world around us can change and be more receptive to us and start to understand exactly what it is we're going through. And it takes a long time. That's the thing, is that it takes, we need to be patient.
Yes.
We need to be kind. I find it's easier for us to be kind to others and patient with others.
To be with ourselves.
We need to start with ourselves. We need to be kind. We need to be patient. We need to be understanding. And we need to take the time that we need to take to make sense of the things that have happened to us. Maybe we don't understand why. Till today, I can't tell you why. I don't think I've reached resolution as to why. But I at least reached a point where I can forgive myself. And in that forgiveness, then we start to grow, and it's peeling through all of those layers. That's where we come back again to the title of the book called Skins, because all those skins start to fall away and we start to see the beauty and the perfection that was created when God created us for who we were meant to be. Not that we're perfect people, that's not what I'm saying. But he was perfect in his decision to create us. And then we can reach that state as well.
Wow.
That was a mouthful.
A very powerful one, because I really believe that there's always someone who is going to use this message to transform their lives. So I thank you for opening up and sharing in the bit that you did. I look forward to everybody buying the book. So if you could please tell us where people can get your book, when will it be readily available, where are all the platforms that they can get it from?
So for now, because we're taking pre-orders, because we've just about launched the book, so pre-orders are available on my website. You can go to www www.rnsanita.co.za, and you can order your copy there. And then we're launching on the 26th of June, so it's just a couple of weeks away. And the information and the date for the launch event is also on the website. But we're also talking to exclusive books. There's a process that we have to follow in order to get the book on their shelves. But trusting that in a couple of weeks you'd be able to get the book off the shelves at exclusive books and a number of other small book outlets. So that's the plan for now.
Okay, awesome. But I look forward to getting my own copy on pre-order. And I also look forward to your event on the 26th if people can join in and come in. Are you going to do book readings on the day, or what's the plan there?
So we would definitely like to at least go through one chapter, and it would be great if people have already read some of the book when they come to the launch, so that they can come with specific questions or things that they need, that they would like to, questions that they'd like to ask, or just to relate in terms of the story. That would also be great. So, we're still in the planning process of the launch event, so I don't want to give away too much at this time.
You don't have to, but the date is clear. It's the 26th of June.
The date is the 26th.
Yes. And then now, if you are comfortable, you can share some of your information outside of the website. Can people get a hold of you maybe directly? No?
Yes, I can be reached on anita@stripedgiraffe.co.za.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Anita. I really appreciate you. But most importantly, I take my hat off to you. Because going through the motions of things that happened many years ago and unraveling through all of that trauma to produce something that, in hopes will help not one, but many people is very commendable. So thank you so much for going through the process and going through the journey of writing the book. I trust that, it's going to be a bestseller.
Thank you for today.
All right. Please hang tight and we'll be back just after the break.
Zoe Live Radio, the abundant life experience. Your number one inspiration station, Zoe Live Radio, the abundant life experience.
Welcome back. I trust you learned something from that interview with Anita and her telling a bit about her story and what her book is about. And I think with that, I'd like to include a few books that you can use to empower yourself to go through some of the psychological aspects of the mindset of an abuser, as well as you as the victim. And it's important for us to always have a dual understanding, as well as look at the matter from both lenses, from the lens of both the victim as well as the perpetrator. Because if you are the perpetrator, then you get empowered by understanding the mindset of your victim and helping you work through those motions as how you can be a better person, how you can change and have an effect on people that is less violent and not abusive. But also, if you are the victim, you can then understand the psychology and the mindset of the person who is violating you and the person who is making your life difficult or nearly impossible. So I'm going to go through 6 books that I'm going to read some of the reviews for you. We are just going to unpack about what they're about so that somehow you can maybe resonate with one of these titles and they can help you navigate your journey and find either healing or help if you are on either side of the spectrum. The first book is Psychopath Free. It is titled by Jackson Mackenzie. And the review reads that, have you ever been in a relationship with a psychopath? Chances are, even if you did, you would never know it. Psychopaths are cunning charmers and master manipulators to the point where you start to accept the most extreme behaviors as normal, even if it hurts you All around us, every single day, human beings devoid of empathy are wreaking havoc and destroying lives in the coldest, most heartless ways imaginable. In constant pursuit of money, sex, influence, or simple entertainment, psychopaths will do whatever it takes to gain power over others. They hide behind a veil of normalcy, arranging their friends and partners like pawns in a game of chess. Using false praise and flattery to get what they want, they can lure any unsuspecting target into a relationship. Once hooked, their charming promises spin into mind games and psychological torture. Victims are left devastated and confused, unable to recognize or even put into words the nightmare that just took place. Written from the heart, Psychopath Free is the first guide for survivors written by a survivor, offering hope for healing and thriving after psychopathic abuse. Say goodbye to the chaos, self-doubt, and victimization. You are free. What really intrigued me about this book was that sometimes we go into relationships with people not understanding that everything in its inception starts out innocent, it starts out good. We think, we look forward to the best in people. We think this is going to work out. Possibly you're going to walk down the aisle and live happily ever after. But then when reality hits, we have a hard time reconciling the difference between our imagined and our aspirations of this person and what we want them to be and who they actually are. So nobody goes into a relationship with a psychopath knowingly. Nobody would subject themselves to being parented by a psychopath knowingly. But sometimes the people that we choose to partner with in relationships as women, then you end up, putting your children at risk, putting other members of your family at risk, because some abusers don't go only as far as harming you. They also then go and extend that harm and hurt into other members of your family and even your children in the cases where you are married and you now have children. So understanding the psychology and the mindset behind a psychopath is so key, so that you can recognize the signs, recognize the symptoms, and find a way of escape. The second book that I am going to take us through is titled Power: Surviving and Thriving After Narcissistic Abuse, a collection of essays on malignant narcissism and recovery from emotional abuse. This book is titled by Shahida Arabai. Pathological mind games, covert and overt put-downs, triangulation, gaslighting, projection. These are the manipulative tactics survivors of malignant narcissism are unfortunately all too familiar with. As victims of silent crimes where the perpetrators are rarely held accountable, survivors of narcissistic abuse have lived in a war zone of epic proportions, enduring an abuse cycle of love bombing and devaluation, psychological violence on steroids. In this essay compilation, readers can enjoy some of Shahida's thought pieces on narcissistic abuse, what therapists have to say about malignant narcissists, and how children of narcissist parents can become trapped in the trauma repetition cycle. Survivors are often offered new insights on what it means to be both a survivor and a thriver of covert manipulation and trauma. Power teaches us that it's important to not only understand the tactics of toxic personalities, but also to recognize and combat the effects of narcissistic abuse. It guides the survivor to learning, growing, healing, and most important of all, owning their agency to rebuild their lives and transform their powerlessness into victory. One of the most important dynamics of abuse is that you have victims that start being victimized at a very early age. So it's either you as a child find yourself abused by a parent or a relative, or you are just a part of a narcissistic relationship with a love relationship with somebody. And that then spills over to, like I said, your other family members, including your children and relatives. So we need to recognize some of the patterns of a narcissist, and you need to understand how that person's mind works. What are the manipulating factors? What are the things that they are going to try and say and do to you for you to fall into the trap of being under their power and under their control? So recognizing all of those things will give you an advantage, because we all know that knowledge is power, but I really believe that it is applied knowledge that makes you powerful. So you need to empower yourself with the right tools, with the right knowledge, with the right tactics as well, because if you are going to be in a situation where tactics are being used against you, you need to know how to launch an offense against such things, both at a psychological level, and take the necessary steps to remove yourself from those kind of harmful situations. The next book we are going to look at is titled Boundaries. It's a New York Times bestseller, and it is authored by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. So it reads that if you've ever wondered, can I set limits and still be a loving person? How do I answer someone who wants my time, love, energy? Why do I feel guilty when I consider setting boundaries? Unpacking the laws of boundaries, Drs. Cloud and Townsend give you a biblically based answer to these and other questions, and show you how to set healthy boundaries with your spouse, children, your friends, your co-workers, and even with yourself. In Boundaries, Drs. Cloud and Townsend show you how to bring new health to your relationships. You'll discover firsthand how to reclaim your freedom to walk as the loving, giving, fulfilled individual God created you to be. This is very important for us, because often when we try and set boundaries in relationships, we may be overwhelmed with this feeling of guilt, like we are pushing people away, or what are people going to think of us when we are now no longer wanting to do certain things to the certain extent that they may want us to. But I think for our own sanity, as well as our own sometimes relational peace, sometimes people will require a lot out of you, and that may be a commitment that you're not willing to make. And especially in relationships where abuse has been a factor, you really want to protect your own peace, you protect your own space sometimes, and setting those boundaries will be very important in how you relate and engage with people. I think sometimes maybe starting out our relationships with very clearly set out boundaries will help maybe even prevent some of the things that we suffer, some of the manipulation and outright abuse that we can be victims of when we haven't set healthy boundaries for ourselves as well as the ones that we are in relationship with. So the next book is going to be Codependent No More: How to Stop Controlling Others and Start Caring for Yourself. The book is written by Melody Beatty, and she says that, is someone else's problem your problem? If, like so many others, you've lost sight of your own life in the drama of tending to someone else's, you may be codependent. You may find yourself in this book, the healing touchstone of millions, this modern classic by one of America's best-loved and most inspirational authors, holds the key to understanding codependency and to unlocking its stultifying hold on your life. With instructive life stories, personal reflections, exercises and set self-tests, Codependent No More is a simple, straightforward, readable map of the perplexing world of codependency, charting the path to freedom and a lifetime of healing, hope, and happiness. We all want to be happy, but sometimes I think we do it at the expense of ourselves, because we become codependent on other people. When you really don't have a strong sense of identity of who you are, what your worth is, and some of the things that you value, you may find yourself trapped in relationships that you are codependent. You're not necessarily interdependent on those people in a healthy way, in a way that says, let's do things together, let's work things together, but you really need these people more than you want them in your life. And codependency can even lead to some of the aspects of abuse that people suffer, physical abuse, emotional abuse, economic abuse, because you are so codependent on the next person that you feel that without them, in their absence, you become nothing. In their absence, you do not have a value of your own that does not need to be supported or even validated by the next person. So it is important for us to have a very good and clear understanding of ourselves as individuals, because once you know and you have a firm grasp of your values, your value that you bring, your worth, you will not tolerate a lot of the things that happen in abusive situations. That comes a lot with context. I'm not saying that every person that has been abused, it happened to them simply because they didn't know who they are. But I strongly believe that once you have a very clear understanding of your value and your worth, it becomes very difficult for somebody to devalue you, to disrespect you, to beat you into submission without you putting up the necessary fight for your own identity, for your own sanity, for your own peace. It is not by any means easy to walk away from abusive relationships. From every person that I've known that has been involved involved in an abusive relationship, it sometimes spans for many, many years, where there's hope involved in it, where people are hopeful that someone will change, where people are hopeful because you are married to this person and you have vowed to God that you will be there with them till death do you part. You have children with this person, and sometimes even when they are abusing your own children and they are inflicting harm and pain in the people that you love so dearly, it becomes still difficult for you to walk away because you understand also the effects and the impact that it'll have on you personally, as well as the people that are impacted or affected by that particular exit. But I think Codependent No More is a very good read, that if you are in that position where you are needing other people more than you are relying on yourself, you need to reflect on that situation and find a way to remedy it. The next book is Why Does He Do That? Often in the context of abuse, like I said earlier when I started with the reviews, is that there is always the victim and there's the perpetrator. But I think it's equally important to look at the situation from both the lens of the victim as well as the lens of the perpetrator. And this book helps you do just that. I mean, Lundi Bancroft takes us through inside the minds of angry and controlling men. And it's a groundbreaking bestseller because he was previously a counselor who specializes in working with abusive men, and he uses his knowledge about how abusers think to help women recognize when they are being controlled or devalued in a relationship and to find ways to get free of abuse. He says he loves you. So why does he do that? I find that such a pertinent question, because a lot of us think because this person claims to love me, because they even say that they love me, they will not treat me in a certain way. And when you find yourself in that position where what they are saying and what they are doing is completely worlds apart, how do you respond to that? So he says he loves you. So why does he do that? You've asked yourself this question again and again. Now you have the chance to see inside the minds of angry and controlling men and change your life. You will learn about the early warning signs of abuse, the nature of abusive thinking, the myths about abusers, 10 abusive personality types, the role of drugs and alcohol, what you can fix and what you can't fix, and how to get out of an abusive relationship safely. That part about getting out of a abusive relationship safely is the greatest takeaway in the book, because a lot of us have our own notions of what we think people who are being abused should do to escape the situation, but sometimes they find themselves dead. Sometimes they find themselves in positions where they have become the violent ones, where they have now turned against their own abuser and they have turned into the monster. They have become the murderer of their own abuser. So those situations are something that we need to keep in mind when we are looking at the abused person, and they are now mindset along the path of being abused, them finding themselves lost in this situation and having no sense of direction and guide as to who they really and truly are outside of this situation. So learning about the mindset of the perpetrator is equally as key, because if you can recognize yourself in some of the warning signs of abuse, then you can sit back and reflect on the situation to say, okay, what am I going to do? Because I see that this is what is happening to me. How am I going to try and effect change and implement ways and strategies that will help me get out of the situation without me losing my mind completely or turning into the person that I am trying to walk away from? So the last book that I have is more about healing. It's from Dr. Brené Brown, and it's called The Gifts of Imperfection. Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. So Dr. Brown is one of the most popular authors, especially in the psychology field recently, because she has a show, she has podcasts and other platforms that have since supported her work, and she's very profound. And this book more so because it navigates the journey of surviving abusive relationships. And it's not just your average self-help book, but it is a result of much research and psychological evidence that she presents in the book that can help sort of give you the confidence to say that sometimes you cannot just rely on your own personality and your limited knowledge and information, but you need to delve deeper and consult sources of information that are more leading you to get an understanding of the psychology of it and not just what you would think would be the problem at a surface level. But most importantly, the book tells you how to love yourself again. And I think that is the most important thing. Anita also spoke about this as to how to reclaim her identity, how to reclaim her value, her sense of value. So Skins talks about it, but I really think that the research back up that Dr. Brown's book brings will be very, very helpful in navigating the journey of being a victim of abuse, as well as looking at your perpetrator in a way that also helps you be empathic, because essentially we all suffer from the sin nature and we all are broken in some ways until we find the healing that we need to become the transformed beings that we all have the potential to be. And the perpetrator may be an abuser through the lens of society, but to you, they might be a husband, they may be a brother, they may be, someone that you are in very close relationship, a friendship, a very good co-worker that you related with for the longest time, not knowing that they're abusing their wife or that they're beating their kids. So it's also important for us to look at it through the lens of the perpetrator to say, these people are also hurting in some ways. These people are also broken in some ways. Some in a narcissistic, intentional, deliberate way, but some are also the victim of circumstance. And we also need to factor that understanding in when we are dealing with them so that we don't fall into the trap of allowing ourselves to look at people in a hateful way, in a way that is not constructive, in a way that does not allow them to be rehabilitated. Yes, it's difficult when you're on the victim end and you were the one who got raped and you were the one who got beat up and you were the one who was on the receiving end of the abuse. But sometimes I think as people, we need to also look at it from another perspective to say, maybe the person who beat me up did it because they were beat up, and it's a vicious cycle. So instead of having the cycle repeat itself perpetually, how do we find healing, both for the victim and the perpetrator? So that is it for the book reviews for today. I hope that one of these titles will resonate with you. I hope that you will investigate some of these books further. Get a copy for yourself if you find yourself on either side of the spectrum, because it's important for all of us to find the healing that we need in order for us to be the people that we should be in a society that is healed and in a society that can be unified with people that can live constructive lives. And on another note, this week is Child Protection Week. From the 30th of May to the 6th of June. So if there is anybody that you know out there, or a child that you know happens to suffer violence, maybe use your voice. Maybe raise your hand to say, you know what, I am aware of the situation, and now I will use my voice and I will be prepared to speak up, say something, or even go as far as to do something to help that child. Thank you so much for tuning in. Catch you after the break.
Getting into the spirit and the word through music with Zoe Live Radio, the abundant life experience. Offering the fruits of our lips to the Almighty, the best in gospel music. Zoe Live Radio, the abundant life experience.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying tuned in to the show. We appreciate your listening to the stories, listening to the authors and the people that, you know, have stories to tell that can really help you navigate your own life and impact your own life in a different way and lead it in a whole new trajectory. But for tonight, that is it. Our exit poem and our poetic inspiration for this week is from Maya Angelou, and the poem is titled Phenomenal Woman. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until we catch each other again next week, have a fruitful week and God bless.
Many people wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breasts, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palms of my hands, the need for my care. Because I'm a woman, phenomenally, phenomenal woman. All you women and me.